Right now, though, if you fly a lot and you're noticing a lot more bumpy flights, you might want to blame climate change. Researchers say something called clear air turbulence is becoming more frequent. Paul Williams is a professor of atmospheric science at the University of Reading in England. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Good to talk to you.
So why climate change, and why is clear air turbulence something that is just kind of an issue with pilots not being able to know they're flying into this?
Yeah, well, the clue's in the name, really. We call it clear air turbulence precisely because it's invisible. So often the first time the pilots know that there's any clear air turbulence there is when they're actually flying right in the middle of it. So it tends to have the potential to cause injuries because the plane will be flying through clear blue skies, seatbelt sign will be turned off. This doesn't show up on the radar on the flight deck. So it does tend to cause injuries. And in fact, we know that about 5,000 aircraft every year in the US encounter turbulence. This is any form of turbulence that is strong enough to lift you up out of your seat if you're not seatbelted. This does cause hundreds of injuries and hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of economic cost.
And is there evidence that this is increasing, and why?
There is, and it might seem hard to believe, it might seem incredible, but we do have evidence now, a lot of evidence, that climate change is the reason. I've been studying air turbulence for the past 20 years, since my PhD in atmospheric physics. And what we found in that time is that the jet stream is changing because of climate change, and it's the jet stream that generates this clear air turbulence. There's something in the jet stream called wind shear, and we know from satellite measurements that that has got stronger by 15% since satellites first began measuring it in the 1970s, and we might see a further 30% increase by the end of this century. And so we've been crunching the numbers on what this means for clear air turbulence. And what we find is that we are likely to see 2 to 3 times as much severe turbulence in the coming decades by maybe the 2050s.
So to tackle this problem, do airline travelers just need to be more aware that, hey, you better stay seatbelted in your seat because you could hit your head pretty hard on the ceiling of the aircraft? Or is there something else that the airliners need to do? Do they need to change how high up they go? And isn't that going to affect how much fuel they use?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, I've been wondering the same thing myself, and so we've looked into it. And unfortunately, changing altitude is not going to help here. We see the same increases, whether it's 30,000 feet or 40,000 feet. So it's going to be up to, well, I think we need to push forward on a few different fronts. Certainly, better compliance with seatbelt wearing policies from passengers would help. We know that if you're seatbelted, that's virtually a guarantee of safety. The only thing that can harm you is if the overhead luggage bins pop open and a suitcase or whatever falls out and hits you on the head, but that's very unlikely. Another thing we could push forward on is the quality of the clear air turbulence forecasts. So pilots use these forecasts just like regular weather forecasts, but they're forecasting the strength of the turbulence. 20 years ago, they were about 60% accurate. Today, they're much better, around 85%, but there's still more we could do there. I'm devoting my career to making these forecasts as accurate as possible. I'd like to see no passenger ever injured by turbulence again. That's the dream.
So is the bottom line, though, for passengers who are concerned about all this, that so long as they keep seatbelted during at least most of the flight, even if there are more instances and more severe cases of turbulence, they don't really have anything to be alarmed about. Is that right?
I think so. I'm not concerned that certain parts of airspace will become unnavigable because of this. I'm not suggesting we'll have to avoid flying over certain parts of the world. I mean, severe turbulence is rare. Only about 0.1% of the atmosphere has severe turbulence in it. And even if it were to double or treble, that's still only a few tenths of a percent. So your individual chance, if you're heading to LAX and you're about to get on a flight, your individual chance of encountering severe turbulence is small. But of course, given the number of planes in the skies, sooner or later, one of them will hit it. And yeah, just do what the pilots do. Always keep your seatbelt fastened. That's certainly what I do whenever I'm seated. And that's really the recommendation for everyone.
All right, thanks so much. That is Paul Williams, professor of atmospheric science at the University of Reading in England.